This illustration deals with splices and 590.4G, exception 2, items 1 through items 3. Now, this just kind of gives you a list of splicings where a box is required, where it's not required. But notice 590 is temporary power. And the purpose of the change is a new exception has been accepted. The exception has been added to clarify that GFCI protected branch circuits on construction sites that are permanently installed in frame walls and ceilings are used to supply temporary power or lighting shall be permitted with conditions of use. But what they're saying, if you look at the illustration to the left bottom side of the illustration, look at that receptacle there, permanently installed. The wall receptacle with GFCI protection is permitted on the construction site by 590.4G exception 2, but it does have to be GFCI protected. And then notice that if we look at the illustration next to it, it shows a box with cover, but no cover is required with a plaster ring. Will we use a plaster ring so we can maybe have more box fill provided for us? But we do have GFCI protection, but we could use that NM cable, and the way this kind of reads to me, we're not restricted to 3 floors anymore. And for finger safe devices, we'd see 590.4G exception 2. And we kind of get that one out. Now notice the pedestal that's up here. Notice we could have a feeder coming from that, and that feeder would comply with 590.4C as in car, and it could just be an extension cord that's tied in permanently here and permanently back at the service equipment on a pedestal or pole. But this is routed out and put somewhere on the construction site so we can card and plug connect with extension cords equipment in compliance with 400.7 and 240.5 as you see in the call out. Now notice the branch circuits coming out up above. We could use type NM cable, type NMC cable, 590.4C as in car, and then we know Article 334.2 would find these type of cables for us, and exactly how we could use these wiring methods for temporary wiring. Now let's look at the illustration above it to the right hand side at the top. Then notice we have an octagon box with Romex NM type connector. It could be rope, like in Wyoming they call non-metallic sheet cable rope. And then it's permanently installed with a junction box with a plaster ring. And notice we have the connections and we have a guard over the light so that we don't hit it and break it in some manner. And then again, we're supplying it with a 12-2 AWG with ground cable. And then notice it's GFCI protected. Now going over to the next illustration there, we show 4 cables coming in to there, and we have cable clamps on the outside, and they're 12-2 AWG with ground cables at the top. We have 14-2 AWG with ground cables at the bottom in the illustration. We have the same on the right-hand side, and then notice permanently installed and GFCI protected circuits. No cover is required because we're using it on construction site. But now when it's permanent and we're going to keep it out there as a permanent means, then we need to have the cover on it because OSHA 70B, 70E, and the NEC, all these standards and codes do not allow exposed terminations, conductors, and splices and things of that nature. Now notice the one at the bottom. We have a permanent wall. We have a listed splicing devices here, Scotch locks, Buchanan's, whatever type of connector you're using there for that splice. And notice GFCI protection would be required. It's a metal box. We need an equipment grounding the box, and then we would pigtail out with an equipment ground that would connect to equipment that needed to be grounding. And then it tells you under these conditions, be sure and review 590.4G as in gray, exception 2, and you'd have items 1 through 3. Now, this new exception is addressing these wiring methods in this manner. So on construction sites or where you use temporary wiring, you know, if we should, for example, just giving you an example, decorative Christmas lighting around a dwelling unit. Now, that's good for 90 days if you don't install it in a permanent manner, see? And you find that in Article 590. But if you're on a construction site and it took 3 years to finish that construction site, then you can use this temporary wiring technique less than that would be required for permanent. And this section is pointing all this out to a person such as electrician putting these systems in for construction power use.